The Austrian psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl has a very famous quote. He says that between stimulus and response is a space, and in that space lies your power to choose. In that space is power and freedom. So it's a beautiful quote of actually what mindfulness is, of how we, between the external input that we get through the senses and how we think about it and how we react to it or how we act on it, or even our own thoughts and how our thoughts lead to more thoughts and lead to more actions, between that kind of cause and effect process, there's a space. And in that space, we can insert mindfulness. And by inserting mindfulness in that space, we are actually empowered to be in a place of choice in how we respond to life. And it's a beautiful quote because it really points to the whole essence of what meditation is. And it really points to the whole essence of what mindfulness is. And to insert our awareness, to insert our attention, to insert our mindfulness between stimulus and response. And one of the, from Buddhist meditation, one of the doctrines, the early Buddhist doctrines, is something called dependent origination. That everything there is a cause and effect process, and nothing happens out of nowhere. You don't get angry just out of nowhere. It's not the other person's fault, or whatever it is, frustrated or have desire or addictions or whatever. That there is a process that's happening, but usually we can't see it. Why we can't see it? Because it's happening rather fast. It's happening rather unconsciously, and we are driven by drives that we're often unaware of. Dependent origination means that there is a cause and effect process to everything that's happening in our life. Certainly everything that's happening to us. And to give you an example of this, it's like, imagine a sound. You hear the waves are coming in and boom, there's a sound. And maybe you're thinking, oh, it's nice sound, it's beach, it's the morning, the sun's coming up. And then all that association says something to you. Maybe it reminds you of something from your childhood, or it's a pleasant thought comes up, or an unpleasant thought comes up, or judgment, or criticism, or you go into some type of association. Well, the way that this works, and this is from the Buddhist psychology, the Abhidhamma, and we'll just take sound as an example of how the stimulus and response is applied to what's happening in our experience. The sound of the waves comes in. It's a sound that's moving through the air. The vibrations are moving through the air, and up until then, there's no experience. It's just happening. But then it reaches the sensitive part of my eardrum. And the moment it touches the sensitive part of the eardrum, this is cause and effect, the sound comes, hits the sensitive part of the eardrum, and hearing consciousness arises. That's how this happens. That's how I hear a sound. The sound wave moves through the air, touches the sensitive part of my eardrum, hearing consciousness arises. The very next moment, the mind, again, this is according to Buddhist psychology, Abhidhamma, the mind determines, the very next moment, the mind determines whether that's a pleasant or unpleasant or neutral sound. If it's a pleasant sound, there might be a little desire. If it's an unpleasant sound, there might be a little aversion. If it's a neutral sound, maybe you don't even pay attention to it. You think of something else, or you pay attention to something else. Sound moves through the air, touches the sensitive part of the eardrum. Hearing consciousness arises. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Desire, aversion, spacing out. And then all kinds of association happens. Now that process of dependent origination, doom, 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 happens in an extremely short period of time. That process of stimulus, sound in this case, and response, the way that I respond to it mentally and the way that I may even respond to it physically through actions, that space happens, or that process happens in an extremely short period of time. In fact, it happens in less than a moment, less than a second, and again, according to Buddhist psychology, each second is made up of several moments. In fact, Buddhist psychology says that each second, just 1 second, has hundreds of moments inside of 1 second. Now you might think, wow, that's kind of crazy, but actually, if you meditate, and if you really kind of reach a high level skill of energetic effort, mindfulness, and concentration, the power to observe, it's like really kind of, the microscope, changing the power on a microscope, seeing deeply into each second, into each moment, you will actually see that yes, 1 second is made up of hundreds of moments happening incredibly fast in an extremely short period of time. That is dependent origination. And the practice of mindfulness is nothing more than inserting our attention, inserting our, as Viktor Frankl says, our power of choice and our freedom between stimulus and response. Now, if that whole process happens in an extremely short period of time, less than a second, a handful of moments within a second, if it happens in that short period of time, then normally we don't see it. But if we practice and develop our mindfulness with energetic effort, with concentration, when we develop it, we actually get to the point where we can see that process of dependent origination. We can see it and we become mindful of it. The moment you become mindful, the moment you insert mindfulness within that process of dependent origination, the process stops. It will not continue. There might be a little bit of momentum behind it, called karma. There might be a little bit of momentum behind that process, but the moment I put mindfulness, when I place mindfulness in there, the rest of that chain of association will not arise. Or, because I'm in a power of choice, I can choose to let those thoughts play out. So in that case, mindfulness is an incredibly empowering practice. Imagine yourself, maybe, perhaps, this has happened to you someday in your past, where you just kind of wake up or you come to your senses and you're standing in front of the refrigerator, looking for something to eat. And you become mindful, you think, wow, how did I get here? Here I am in front of the refrigerator looking for something to eat. How did this happen? I don't know. You make a determination, I'm going to practice mindfulness. Next time it happens, you see yourself, you wake up as you're reaching for the refrigerator. You say, oh, that's interesting. How did I get here? How did I get here to reach for the refrigerator? Then you make a determination, I'm going to practice more mindfulness. I'm going to insert my attention, my mindfulness in between stimulus and response. You make a commitment to practice more. Next thing you know, you see yourself walking towards the refrigerator. Wow, practice, I'm getting closer. All of this process, I don't know how it started, but now I can actually see myself moving towards it. Then you practice more, and you actually see yourself while you're sitting on the sofa or the chair in the living room, thinking, I'm going to the refrigerator. You catch your mindfulness, your awareness is catching that process sooner and sooner and sooner. You keep practicing, then you start to kind of feel water, saliva, or desire arising in the body. I want something to eat. You catch the process sooner and sooner and sooner. As you keep practicing, because you're committed and because you're applying the practice of mindfulness in your daily life, you see yourself watching a television commercial, for example. There's a sweet or something tasty or salty or savory comes up in the mind, and it triggers desire in the mind, or actually it exposes the desire in the mind. It doesn't trigger it, it exposes the desire in the mind. And then you see the desire, I want to go get something to eat. You get up, you're walking towards the refrigerator, you're reaching for the door, you open the door, you put your head in the refrigerator. You see the whole process that happens. That's what happens when you become mindful of that space between stimulus and response. And when you become mindful of that space between stimulus and response, for example, watching a television commercial with some sweet or savory food on there, or drink that you want that triggers the desire, you're mindful of the whole process. The moment you're mindful of the whole process, the continuing chain of events will not arise unless you choose. Between stimulus and response is a space, and in that space is your power to choose. In that space is your power, your choice, and your freedom. With the practice of mindfulness, you will be empowered. With the practice of mindfulness, you will be in the space between stimulus and response, where you have the power to choose. So I would challenge you, encourage you, I offer you today to go through your day practicing this beautiful quote from Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response is a place of choice. That's your mindfulness practice. And until then, I wish you a great day of practice, and may your practice continue to lead you forward, forever, always forward on the path of meditation. Thank you, everybody. All the best.